The 1930s were a time of great uncertainty. The world was still reeling from the devastation of World War I. Millions of people had died, and economies were in ruins. In Germany, resentment festered over the Treaty of Versailles, which had imposed harsh penalties on the defeated nation. The rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party in Germany further destabilized Europe. Hitler, driven by a toxic ideology of racial superiority, sought to expand German territory and dominance. He rebuilt Germany's military strength in defiance of the treaty limitations. Meanwhile, in Japan, militaristic leaders sought to expand their empire in Asia. They saw an opportunity to exploit the weakness of European powers in the region. Japan's aggression in China further escalated global tensions. The League of Nations, formed after World War I to prevent future conflicts, proved powerless to stop the drift toward war. Diplomacy failed to address the underlying grievances and ambitions of the aggressor nations. By 1939, the world stood on the precipice of another catastrophic conflict. On September 1, 1939, the German army invaded Poland. This act of aggression marked the beginning of World War II. Germany's invasion of Poland was swift and brutal, employing the devastating blitzkrieg tactics. Great Britain and France, bound by treaties to defend Poland, declared war on Germany 2 days later. However, they were ill-prepared for a major conflict. The initial months of the war were characterized by a sense of stunned disbelief and a desperate attempt to mobilize resources. The Soviet Union, under Joseph Stalin's leadership, had signed a non-aggression pact with Germany. This pact secretly carved up Poland and other Eastern European territories between the two dictators. The Soviet Union occupied eastern Poland while Germany took control of the West. The invasion of Poland shattered the fragile peace that had existed in Europe. It plunged the world into another global conflict, more widespread and devastating than the first. Germany's early successes in the war were largely due to its blitzkrieg strategy. Blitzkrieg, meaning lightning war, involved a rapid, coordinated assault using tanks, aircraft and infantry. This approach aimed to overwhelm the enemy's defenses before they could react effectively. German forces quickly overran Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium and France in a series of lightning campaigns. The speed and ferocity of the German advance stunned the Allies. The fall of France, once considered a major military power in June 1940, was a particularly shocking defeat. The blitzkrieg tactics relied heavily on air power to disrupt enemy communications, destroy supply lines and demoralize defending troops. The Luftwaffe, Germany's air force, played a crucial role in these early victories. However, the blitzkrieg doctrine proved less effective in later stages of the war, particularly in the vast expanses of the Eastern Front. While war raged in Europe, Japan continued its aggression in Asia. Japan's ultimate goal was to establish a greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere under its control. This vision masked a brutal reality of exploitation and subjugation. On December 7, 1941, Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The attack on Pearl Harbor brought the United States into the war. The United States declared war on Japan the following day, and Germany and Italy, Japan's allies in the Axis powers, declared war on the United States. With the entry of the United States, the war became truly global. Fighting spread across vast areas of Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Pacific. Millions of soldiers and civilians were drawn into the conflict, making it the deadliest war in human history. Section 5. Turning the Tide, Stalingrad, El Alamein, and D-Day. The year 1942 marked a turning point in the war. The Axis powers suffered a series of significant defeats that halted their advance. In the Pacific, the Battle of Midway in June 1942 proved to be a decisive victory for the United States Navy. Japan's plan to capture Midway Island and further expand its empire was thwarted. In North Africa, the British Eighth Army, under the command of General Bernard Montgomery, defeated the German and Italian forces, led by General Erwin Rommel at the Battle of El Alamein in November 1942. This victory marked the beginning of the end for Axis forces in North Africa. Perhaps the most significant turning point on the Eastern Front was the Battle of Stalingrad, which raged from August 1942 to February 1943. The German Sixth Army, under General Friedrich Paulus, was encircled and destroyed by Soviet forces. The Battle of Stalingrad was a crushing defeat for Germany and marked the beginning of its retreat from the east. On June 6, 1944, Allied forces launched Operation Overlord, the largest amphibious invasion in history. American, British and Canadian troops landed on the beaches of Normandy, France, in what became known as D-Day. The D-Day invasion marked the beginning of the liberation of Western Europe from Nazi occupation. Section 6 Allied Strategies, 2 fronts, 1 goal. The Allied powers faced the challenge of fighting a war on multiple fronts. In Europe, the primary objective was to defeat Germany. In the Pacific, the goal was to defeat Japan and liberate occupied territories. The Allied strategy in Europe was to pursue a Germany-first approach. This meant concentrating their forces on defeating Germany before turning their full attention to Japan. The Soviet Union bore the brunt of the fighting on the Eastern Front. At the same time, the Western Allies engaged German forces in North Africa, Italy and eventually France. In the Pacific, the United States adopted a strategy of island hopping. This involved capturing key islands from Japanese control, gradually moving closer to the Japanese mainland. The Pacific War was characterized by fierce fighting, often in challenging jungle terrain. Section 7, the Holocaust, a stain on humanity. While the war raged on battlefields across the globe, Nazi Germany was carrying out a systematic genocide against Jews and other targeted groups. The Holocaust, as it became known, was an act of barbarism on an unprecedented scale. Driven by a racist ideology that viewed Jews as an existential threat, the Nazi regime established concentration camps and extermination camps across Europe. Jews were rounded up and deported to these camps where they were subjected to unimaginable horrors. Millions of Jews were murdered in gas chambers, shot or worked to death. The Holocaust was a horrific crime against humanity, leaving an indelible stain on history. It stands as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked hatred, prejudice, and totalitarianism. Section 8, Victory and Aftermath, a New World Order. By 1945, Germany and Japan were on the verge of defeat. The Allied forces had gained the upper hand on all fronts. The relentless bombing of German cities and industrial centers by Allied air forces had crippled Germany's war machine. On May 7, 1945, Germany surrendered unconditionally to the Allies. Hitler had committed suicide in his Berlin bunker days earlier. As Soviet forces closed in on the city, the war in Europe was over. In the Pacific, the United States continued its island-hopping campaign, culminating in the battles of Iwo Jima and Okinawa. These battles were among the bloodiest of the war, with heavy casualties on both sides. To avoid a costly invasion of the Japanese mainland, the United States dropped atomic bombs on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki on August 6 and 9, 1945, respectively. The devastation caused by the atomic bombs, combined with the Soviet Union's declaration of war against Japan, forced Japan to surrender unconditionally on August 15, 1945. Section 9, A Lasting Legacy, Lessons from the Ruins. World War II had a profound and lasting impact on the world. It reshaped the global order, led to the creation of the United Nations, and ushered in the atomic age. The war also left an indelible mark on the human psyche. The war had claimed the lives of an estimated 40 to 85 million people, leaving countless others wounded, displaced, and traumatized. The Holocaust in particular forced the world to confront the depths of human depravity. In the aftermath of the war, there was a widespread desire to prevent such horrors from ever happening again. The United Nations was established in 1945 with the goal of maintaining international peace and security. The war also led to the emergence of the United States and the Soviet Union as the two dominant superpowers. This rivalry, known as the Cold War, would shape global politics for the next 4 decades. World War II was a watershed moment in human history. It was a conflict that tested the limits of human endurance and resilience. The lessons learned from this devastating war, particularly the importance of diplomacy, international cooperation, and the defense of human rights, continue to resonate today.